If you understand and apply the lessons of letter 25 to your life, you will be much happier. Would you like to be happier? According to Screwtape, we are not content with a simple, basic Christianity. The terms progressive Christian and conservative Christian are symptomatic of this problem, and this ruins our happiness, and the devils love that. Wormwood's patient is hanging around happy Christians.
The real trouble about this set your patient is living in is that it is merely Christian. They all have individual interests, of course, but the bond remains mere Christianity. What we want, if men become Christians at all, is to keep them in a state of mind I call Christianity and. You know, Christianity and the crisis. Christianity and the new psychology, Christianity and the new order, Christianity and faith healing, Christianity and psychical research, Christianity and vegetarianism, Christianity and spelling reform. If they must be Christians, let them at least be Christians with a difference. Substitute for the faith itself some fashion with a Christian coloring. Work on their horror of the same old thing.
A contemporary list of this Christianity and mentality might include Christianity and political ideology, Republican Christian, conservative Christian, progressive Christian, Christian nationalism, and the list goes on. Christianity and social justice. Social justice is important, and as Christians we are supposed to pray and work toward it, but we sometimes do it to the detriment of other aspects of our faith. Reproductive rights, pro-life, anti-racism, combating poverty, reconciliation. These are good things. But Christianity and environmentalism. Christians take up positions on both sides of environmentalism. Christianity and self-help, merging faith with the self-help movement. There are way too many books in the Christian bookstore that feed off of this combination. Christianity and prosperity. The prosperity gospel emphasizes wealth and success as signs of divine favor, often at the expense of more traditional teachings about humility and charity. Christianity and popular culture? That's adapting faith practices to align with trends in music and entertainment and celebrity culture. Christianity and identity politics, prioritizing group identities and the politics surrounding them over the universal message of Christianity. These are just some of the ways that we can be led by the devils to allow ancillary issues to overshadow mere Christianity. We have an aversion to the same old thing. So why is novelty so attractive to us?
The horror of the same old thing is one of the most valuable passions we have produced in the human heart. An endless source of heresies in religion, folly in counsel, infidelity in marriage, and inconstancy in friendship. The humans live in time and experience reality successively. To experience much of it, therefore, they must experience many different things. In other words, they must experience change. And since they need change, the enemy, being a hedonist at heart, has made change pleasurable to them, just as he has made eating pleasurable.
It is part of human nature to like change, novelty, and innovation. If we don't get a little variety, we get bored. We are averse to monotony. When something is always the same, we cease to derive any pleasure from it. But this is only half the story. We have also been created with a love for permanence.
But since he does not wish them to make change any more than eating, an end in itself, he has balanced the love of change in them by a love of permanence. He has contrived to gratify both tastes together in the very world he has made, by that union of change and permanence which we call rhythm. He gives them the seasons, each season different, yet every year the same, so that spring is always felt as a novelty, yet always as a recurrence of the same immemorial theme. He gives them in his church a spiritual year. They change from fast to feast, but it is the same feast as before.
This love of permanence and change is very much a part of life. Think about a baseball game, a campfire, an orchestral performance. We love these things because they offer a wonderful blend of change and permanence. The demons would like to destroy that balance to achieve their evil purposes in our lives.
Now, just as we pick out and exaggerate the pleasure of eating to produce gluttony, so we pick out this natural pleasantness of change and twist it into a demand for absolute novelty. This demand is entirely our workmanship. If we neglect our duty, men will not only be contented, but transported by the mixed novelty and familiarity of snowdrops this January, sunrise this morning, plum pudding this Christmas. Children, until we have taught them better, will be perfectly happy with a seasonal round of games in which conkers succeeds hopscotch as regular as autumn follows summer. Only by our incessant efforts is the demand for infinite or unrhythmical change kept up.
In our culture, we celebrate novelty. Out with the old, in with the new. Variety is the spice of life. Change is the only constant. A rolling stone gathers no moss. And turn over a new leaf. These are words of wisdom in our culture. Most of the idioms about permanence are not all that positive. A creature of habit. Familiarity breeds contempt. Old habits die hard. I'm in a rut. We see some evidence of this demonic activity in our modern churches. Most evangelical North American churches have abandoned most of the church calendar. We've scratched nearly all of the liturgical rhythms in the Sunday service. Gone is the hymn book with the same old songs. We want new songs to keep worship fresh. The forces of hell are behind our demand for novelty and aversion to the same old thing. So what do the devils hope to achieve with our persistent demand for the new?
This demand is valuable in various ways. In the first place, it diminishes pleasure while increasing desires. The pleasure of novelty is by its very nature more subject than any other to the law of diminishing returns. And continued novelty costs money, so the desire for it spells avarice or unhappiness or both. And again, the more rapacious this desire, the sooner it must eat up all the innocent sources of pleasure, and pass on to those the enemy forbids. Thus, by inflaming the horror of the same old thing, we have recently made the arts, for example, less dangerous to us than perhaps they have ever been. Lowbrow and highbrow artists alike being now daily drawn into fresh, and still fresh, excesses of lasciviousness, unreason, cruelty, and pride. Finally, the desire for novelty is indispensable if we are to produce fashions or vogues.
Our clothing fashions change rapidly. Technology needs to be upgraded constantly. TikTok and Instagram expose us to rapidly changing fads. Our food is fatty, too. New products, new travel destinations, new causes that need activists. Our culture places a premium on novelty and change, often driven by technological advances and social dynamics and consumerism. But the real drivers to all this are the forces of hell.
The use of fashions and thought is to distract the attention of men from their real dangers. We direct the fashionable outcry of each generation against those vices of which it is least in danger, and fix its approval on the virtue nearest to that vice which we are trying to make endemic. The game is to have them all running about with fire extinguishers whenever there is a flood, and all crowding to that side of the boat which is already nearly gunwale under.
Here's a few examples of the devil's work. We live in an incredibly materialistic society, but the devils have convinced many Christians that the most significant threat to our faith is other religions, yoga, New Age spirituality, or the liberals. Here's another one. We live in an incredibly individualistic society, and the devils have us losing our minds if someone says anything about collective responsibility, because to our senses it smells like socialism, which apparently stinks to high heaven. Here's another one. In times when hate speech and divisive rhetoric are prevalent, a whole swath of Christians are taking up arms against political correctness. Here's another one. We live in an extremely permissive society, so the devils have us running around fighting oppression. Here's another one. We currently live in a ridiculously sentimental age. That's the real problem. But the devils have many of us convinced that the real threat are the scientists or anyone with an advanced degree. And the last one. We live in a highly sexualized culture. So the devils have us on witch hunts against any and all forms of sexual purity. I could go on.
But the greatest triumph of all is to elevate this horror of the same old thing into a philosophy so that this nonsense in the intellect may reinforce corruption in the will. It is here that the general evolutionary or historical character of modern European thought, partly our work, comes in so useful. The enemy loves platitudes. Of a proposed course of action, he wants men, so far as I can see, to ask very simple questions. Is it righteous? Is it prudent? Is it possible? Now, if we can keep men asking, is it in accordance with the general movement of our time? Is it progressive or reactionary? Is this the way that history is going? They will neglect the relevant questions.
Again, those relevant questions that the devils want us to neglect. Is it righteous? Is it prudent? Is it possible? These are the same questions that we should be asking of any age, no matter what is going on. To paint it all with a broad brush, we are not usually asking if any particular liberal or conservative position is righteous, prudent, or possible. We are just all gung-ho about it simply because it's liberal or conservative. Our brains have been twisted and have co-opted our wills. Back to Screwtape.
The questions they do ask are, of course, unanswerable, for they do not know the future, and what the future will depends very largely on just those choices which they now invoke the future to help them make. As a result, while their minds are buzzing in this vacuum, we have the better chance to slip in and bend them to the action we have decided on. And great work has already been done. Once they knew that some changes were for the better, and others for the worse, and others again indifferent. We have largely removed this knowledge. For the descriptive adjective unchanged, we have substituted the emotional adjective stagnant. We have trained them to think of the future as a promised land which favored heroes attain, not as something which everyone reaches at the rate of 60 minutes an hour, whatever he does, whoever he is.
So do you want to be happy? Seek contentment in the rhythm of both permanence and change. Look for ways to do more of the same old thing. We are made for this. And living in accordance with the way that we are made is a recipe for contentment and pleasure. In the next letter, Screwtape will advise Wormwood on how to foster in the patient a false and selfish form of love. Thank you, and we'll see you there.